Kakalosh Masechet Rosh Hashana Daf. This is 27A1. We're on the bottom, the last line. Okay, where this is going to be Friday, right? When we're talking about the following. It says over here, Shofar Shenizdak. What happens if you have a shofar that it got cracked? So what happens? The dibeko. So what you did was that you put debek, you put like a type of a glue on top of it to put it back in order that now it's going to be shalem. So it's going to be pasul. Dibek shivle shofaro. But if you put different also parts of the shofar together, it's also going to be pasul. Okay. Next, kavzayin mubet. Nikev ustamo. What happens if it had a hole and then you closed off the hole? So if it's going to stop the tkiya, which means that the call of the shofar is not the same way, it doesn't have the same voice, it's going to be disqualified. But if not, and it doesn't stop right the way that the voice is, it's going to be kosher. Okay, fine. If you're going to come and you're going to be tokea inside of a bor, right, inside of a pit or a dut, which obviously contains water, so it's the same type of a concept, or letocha pitas, or in front, inside of this chavit, inside of a big barrel of earthenware. In kol shofar shama, if he heard the call of the shofar, he's going to be tzedek chovav. In kol havara, but if it was just going to be a call of a havara, which means that it's not the true call, the true voice of the shofar, but rather the call, right, of whether you're going to call it the echo or anything else of that, so you're not going to be tzedek chovav. The same halacha would apply. Imagine you're passing by a synagogue. Yeah, right? Or you're beside a synagogue, right? That's your house is basically living beside a synagogue. V'shama kol shofar, right? That's a biggest bracha, no? Your house beside the synagogue. And then what happens? You heard the call of the shofar. Yeah, what I said was the Gemara and Berachot, if you remember. That's one of the things I think was Rabbi Yochanan said that the biggest bracha that you should have is either a bet kiseh beside your house or a bet knesset beside your house. That's what it says here. So it's if your house was beside the Bet Knesset, the Shama Kol Shofar, and you heard the call of the Shofar or the call of the Megillah, in Kiven Libo, if you had Kavanah, right, in order to be Yitzhak Chovah plus Litzid, right? So then what happens? You're going to be Yitzhak Chovah. But if not, Lo Yatza. The Afal Pish Zeh Shema V'Zeh Shema. That means even though they both heard it, right? Nevertheless, he's not going to be Yitzhak Chovah. Zeh Kiven Libo, Zeh Lo Kiven Libo. Because basically you have to have Kavanah. So that's why it's always important that the one that's doing, you need double Kavanah for both sides. The one that's reading the Megillah, or the one that's blowing the shofar, plus the one that's listening to the shofar, or listening to the Megillah. For example, we're going to be in the middle of a hotel, and we're blowing the shofar, yeah? And all of a sudden, there were people that they were staying in the hotel, they're in the lobby upstairs, and they hear a shofar. Now, the truth is, if we don't have kavanah for them, they could hear, and we could, but it doesn't help, because they have to have kavanah, and we have to have kavanah. So it's very important always to remember. Okay? This is now starting the Gemara. We learned in a braita, right? Aroch bekitzero. What happens right now if you had a shofar that was very long and you made a katzar, you came and you cut it, right? So therefore now it still has a shiur of the shofar. It's still going to be kosher. Geredo v'mido al giredo. He says, however, though, if you came and you made it, right, very, very, we're going to say you started scraping it, so it became very, very thin. V'mido al giredo. So it's mamash. It's like a very thin, right? It's still a shofar, but it's very, very thin. It's still going to be kosher, because at the end of the day, it's a kosher shofar. Tzipau zahav, what happens if you came and you put it with gold? You started gold plating it, right? So what happens? If it was going to be where the mouthpiece, that's what we spoke about this morning, if you remember when we were going ahead, we said if it's going to be a mouthpiece, it's going to be a problem. Right? Why was it going to be a problem? Because then you're blowing, you have a sek, you've got the pasek between the sound and what you're blowing. If you have it by the mouthpiece, it's a problem. Right? That was when we spoke about why do you have a gold or silver, right? Which ones? So here it says if it's going to be bimkom anachat peh, it's going to be pasul. Shelo bimkom anachat peh, but if it's going to be further up, it's going to be kasher. Tzipau zahav mibiflim. What happens if you put it gold on the inside of the shofar? It's also going to be pasul, even if the kol is not nishtana, because atkiya has in zahav is not in the shofar, meaning that it's not in the shofar. It's in the it has to be like the way that it is. Mibachutz, but if it's going to be on the outside, if it changed the kol, so then it's going to be pasul. But if it didn't change the kol, then it's going to be kasher. So something very interesting, which means that once it's on the inside, it's not a shofar anymore. Because the inside is where all the kol is coming out, all the sound is coming out. So even if it changed or didn't change the sound, that's it. You understand? But on the outside, that's where it depends if it changes the kol or it doesn't change the kol. Yeah. Yeah, we said it on top. It said nikev in the middle towards. right? So we said if it had a hole and you close off the hole, if it's going to stop the tekiah, it's going to be pasul. If not, it's going to be kosher. Imagine right now I put one shofar inside of another shofar. Now, obviously, these shofarot have to be very gamishim. You know what gamish means? Very flexible, because if you take a hard shofar, unless one is like I don't know what, it's very difficult to put one inside of another one. But whatever it was, you did do it. In kol pnimi shama, if you heard the inner shofar, you're Yitzhak Chovah. But if you heard the outer shofar, then you're not going to be Yitzhak Chovah. Obviously, the reason why is because if you heard the outer one, right? So then what happens is that there's going to be the sek. You're going to have the pasek. Remember, on the inside, it was always disqualified. Whether it did change it or didn't change the sound, the second that you put an element on the inside of the shofar, you're gone. Right? Remember, the only time that we said whether it changes or doesn't change the sound was only if it's on the outside. On the inside, it's always a problem. So the same thing here. If you had one shofar inside of another shofar, let's say I had that the inner shofar, the mouthpiece was a little bit out, and I come and I blow. So now it's coming out from the inner one. That means even though it's inside of the outer one, but it's coming out from the inner one. So as long as I know that it's coming from the inner one, it's still kosher. Why? Because the sound was coming from the inside, so it's okay. But if it's coming from the outer one, so since there's the inside, there's something there, it's a problem. Okay? Fine. If you came and you were megared, which means you come and you started scraping, whether it's on the inside or on the outside, it's going to be kosher. Gerdo v'mido al giddo kasher. However, though, he comes and he says, also, if you were gerdo v'mido, that means as long as you're able to make it stand the way that it is, right? That's what it sounds like from here, which means that even though you thinned it out, because you made it very thin, that's gerdo, right? The gared is to scrape it off. So you thinned it out, but it was as long as it was going to stand on the way that it is. Okay, that means it's not that it's going to fall because you made it so thin that it just falls. Okay. Right? So this, the truth is the exact same that we just said above, correct? Before it was Natan shofar v'tok shofar. Here it's hiniach, but it's the exact same thing. In kol pnimi shama yatsa, kol chitzon lo yatsa. Okay, so that was the exact same. And then it says hafacho v'takabo lo yatsa. What happens if you wanted to be smart? You turned it around, upside down. Yeah, you turned it around, and now you have the bigger part. And now you go and you blow, and you actually succeeded in blowing. Well, I don't know, but here obviously you had to work for something. So he says here, you're not Yitzhak Chovah. Yeah, the Gemara is going to explain. We're not talking about now that it's like that you were being hofech the shofar, like a person that comes and he changes over his clothing, which means that the inside becomes the outside. Meaning, again, obviously we're talking about a very flimsy shofar that you're able to mamash. You understand? Meaning that I don't know even how you would do that, but yeah, you're turning it inside out. You understand? Like, again, I don't know exactly, but we're talking about mamash that you made it so soft that you're able to turn it inside. We're not talking about that. That for sure is going to be pasul. Really, what the pshat in the Gemara is that I made the outside more. How do you call it? Sorry, the mouthpiece. I made the mouthpiece bigger, the narrow wide, and the wide being narrow. Basically, I switched it. I was ofech the tzinurot, right? Mamash, the mouthpiece I made it very into big, and the big piece I made it into the mouthpiece. That's what it was, and we still said it's going to be pasul. My tama, what's reasoning? Kedera matna. Why wouldn't it say that kol? For sure, why not? I just changed that instead of the mouthpiece is here. And... No. You're always blowing it from the mouthpiece, from the small one. But you switched. The mouthpiece you made big, and the big one you made into mouthpiece. Now you come and you blow from the mouthpiece. Why wouldn't it come out to sound? No, you switched it. You made it small. Again, one more time. You have a shofar, right? The truth is, we had a shofar here, it would be a little bit easier. Yeah, we have a shofar. Okay. What is again inside out. I'm taking this and I'm folding it out. That for sure is pasul. What does the Gemara say? The opposite. This part I made it very, very skinny. This part I made it very fat, and then from this part I come and I blow. But again, it's skinny here. The sound will come out, right? But I changed it, right? I changed it. This became skinny and this became fat. Says the Gemara, you're not going to use Chuvah. Why not? Says the Gemara. My tama, like Rav Matana, Which means that when you are going to be the tokea, the shofar, it has to be that it was during the lifetime. Meaning, since during the lifetime it was the horns the way that they are here, you cannot change the way that the horn is. The second that you change the way that the horn is, that's not the shofar teruah the way that it was. You changed everything. So now you're not going to be tzechubah. Okay? The 2 dot says, Dibek shivre shofar pasul. If you come and you connected different parts of the broken shofar, it's going to be pasul. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the right, Sif alav kol shehu, right? If you came and you made it longer, right? And you added onto it, ben bemino, ben shelo bemino pasul, right? Because it's going to be pasul. Why? That means I had the shofar and I went and I wanted to make it longer. So what did I do? I attached another part over here. Let's say it was not a glue. It was a real other shofar. I came out still pasul. Why? It says, because it says shofar echad velo shnei shofarot. When I said only one shofar is kosher, not 2 shofarot, so if I made it longer, even if I made it longer with another part of a shofar, that's already 2 shofarot. It's not kosher. Nikevu stamo, if it had a hole and then I closed the hole, ben bemino ben shelo bemino pasul, right? Whether it's bemino or shelo bemino, it's pasul. The binatan omer bemino kasher, shelo bemino, yeah, pasul. By the way, you had a chet there. That's what I told you, the story now of Gibraltar. The chet there, where does it take you? It takes you to Shulchan Aruch Sham Siv Zayin, right? Where Sham, Siman Tav Kuf Pevav. Siman Tav Kuf Pevav Siv Zayin. So there it's written mefurash that if it's going to be min b'mino, kasher. If it's min b'shelo mino, it's going to be pasul. So as long as it's the same species of the shofar, it's kosher. It's a different species, no, right? By the way, that's the reason why you have to buy a shofar with hashkacha. I remember I went to Wazan. And when I went to Wazan, right? Yeah, with hashkacha. When I went to Wazan, I bought a shofar over there. And I remember afterwards, right? They went and they told me, right? One of the rabbanim, he went and he told me, you got a new shofar, very nice. Where's hashkacha? And I was thinking, what, you need hashkacha? What, you're going to eat the shofar? Yeah, you need hashkacha. He goes to me, no. Why do you need hashkacha? Because of this. Because many times when they come and they take it off, sometimes there's a psul, there's a crack, there's a hole. If you don't have hashkacha, what happens? Right? So now he comes and he says like this. He comes and he says, right, that ben bemino b'shino. So again, one more time. Binatan, and that's how we're passing says. Bemino, it's going to be kosher. Shelo bemino, it's going to be pasul. Bemino is going to be kosher. He says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan. Vehu shenishtayer rubo. That's only if it's going to be that the majority, right, is shalem. But if it was going to be that it has a hole, that it's lo nishtayer rubo shel shofar, right? That means you don't have the majority of the shofar there. So then miklal the shelo bemino afal pi shenishtayer rubo. It's going to be pasul. So it's mashma that if you're going to say that it's not bemino, even though the majority of the shofar is still whole, it's still going to be pasul, right? That means basically Rabbi Yochanan is coming and he's going to explain. When he said bemino kasher, it's only going to be kasher if the majority is still stick. But if you don't, then it's not going to be kosher. But there are some people that they came and they taught it on the seifa. What does it mean they taught it on the seifa? Shelo bemino is going to be pasul. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says Rabbi Yochanan v'ushin nifchat rubo. When did we just say that it's shalom bemino is going to be pasul? If the majority of the shofar is missing. Miklal. So you see from here, the bemino, that if it's going to be the same species, afal pi shenifchat rubo, it's still going to be kosher. That means as long as you're still using the same species to come and to fix it, doesn't matter whether you still had the majority there or not, according to what we're just mentioning now. Okay? So the Braita now is going to come and say as follows. Tzipau zahami bifnim pasul. If you remember, we already learned this, whether I don't remember if it was this morning or yesterday. We said if you put gold on the inside, so we said it's automatically pasul, even if it doesn't change the voice or not. If it's on the outside, if it changes the voice, so then it's going to be pasul. If it doesn't, it's going to be kosher. Nisdak, if right now it got cracked, leorko, to the length of the shofar, so you have here a crack, so it says it's going to be pasul. Lerochbo, if it's going to be on the rochav, meaning it's not on the orech, it's going to be on the rochav, right? So he comes and he says, "Im nishtayer bo shiur tkiya," as long as you have the shiur of the tkiya, it's going to be kosher. Why? Because we are going to see, right, the chelek, right, which is shamen, which is nistak, kilu, that it was taken off. So therefore, you have, right, a long shofar that you made it shorter, which is going to be kosher. But if not, it's going to be pasul. The kama shiur tkiya. So how much do you need? right? You could take a shofar and cut it down to size. So by how much do you need? He comes and says, it has to be that you're grabbing it in your hand and you could still see it sticking out from both sides. Meaning, if I come and I'm able to hold the whole shofar in my hand, that's pasul. It has to be that I'm still able to see part of the shofar here and part of the shofar here on both sides. Here, obviously, you have much more, right? But you have to have, because if you do not have that, you're able to see on both sides, it's going to be pasul. Sometimes you have certain shofarot, and sometimes you think it's the person. It's not the person. Sometimes you have a shofar, he goes, you sound like a, you're mowing something. They're all kosher. Yeah, they're all kosher. Why? Because it says, all the kolot are going to be kosher. So, they sent to Avu Shmuel, what happens right now if you went and you made a hole in it? Yeah, and then you made a tkiyat shofar. You're going to be tzedek chovah. So imagine you went and you made a hole in it, and then you blew in the shofar. You're going to be tzedek chovah. So says the Gemara. One second. Yeah, he says pshita. Obviously, right? Why did you have to say that the shofar is kasher? Kulu nami miktach tilu. All the shofarot, right? How do you make it? They come and they make the hole. Right, this is what they do. Here they had to make a hole. At the beginning, it was attached. Afterwards, they come and they make the hole here. So obviously, you're making it. So he comes and he says, "No, Amar Ravashi shekedacho bezachruto." You went and you did it on the other part, which means like this. Ravashi comes and he says the keren, when the horn is going to be on the head of the animal, it's got a bone, right? Which that's coming out of his head and is going inside of the shofar. You understand? That means he's got a bone. The bone goes inside of the shofar, and that's why it sticks. Because if not, there's no glue there. It's not glue. It's got a bone, and the bone goes into it. So that's called the zachrut. Now, b'derech klal, we take out the zachrut from the keren, and then it stays hollow, right? And then what they do is that they come and they make a hole, right, at the top. This is where they make the hole, right, in order that they can actually blow inside of it. But he says, Ela kadach betom etzem zachrut, from the beginning until the end, when it was still connected. So therefore, and that's how it became a shofar. So therefore, he comes and he says, but you're still going to the chovah. Why? Ma'u the tema, I would have thought to say that even mim b'mino is going to be chotzetz, which means even though it's from the same bone, right, with the keren, still it should be a chatitza between the tkiyah and the keren, because that's the yikar of the shofar. And therefore, the shofar should be pasul. Kamash Malan comes to teach you that if you actually did so, it's going to be okay. Here, the question is because he says, mim b'mino is not a chatitza. That's one reason. And it says it's not like a shofar inside of another shofar, because here it's all one shofar. Shofar inside of another shofar, you have one shofar putting it inside of another shofar. Here, no. Here it's all one shofar, but you're just making the hole from here to here from the beginning. Right? You're getting rid of the bone and you're doing all of it from the beginning. In such a case where you're doing it, he says that's still going to be kosher. Okay? Fine. So that was until there. Next two dots. We said if you're going to blow a shofar inside of the pit or inside of the other place where they kept the water, that was the dut. So Amar Ravuna says, Lo Shanu, what are we dealing with? When do we say that there's a difference whether you heard the kol shofar or kol havara? Which means, did you hear the kol of the shofar or you heard the echo? And that's very difficult to know because you're actually there. You have to understand which kol did you hear. It's like the same question that they always ask by microphone, by the way. There's huge machlokot in the poskim, even by Masechet Kiddushin. By a Masechet Kiddushin, can you use a microphone or not? So I've seen certain Rosh Yeshivot, they want to be machmir, that they don't use a microphone. It was based upon Rav Eliashiv and other things. Why? Because the people have to hear your voice. Now the question is, when you come and you talk into a microphone, what voice are you hearing? Are you hearing the person's voice or are you hearing the microphone? The microphone is the one that's amplifying the voice. Maybe that's not your voice, right? So because of that, it's actually, there's a big machloket in the poskim. So I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes. What the halacha says. Rav Eliashiv holds it asur. What the halacha says. Megillah, it's not that simple. Megillah, the majority of people say it does. You know how you say it. So that's the question. It's a whole question about it. Even if you're telling me, are you listening? Does that mean that you're listening because you're so close enough you can listen to the guy? Or are you still listening to the voice, which is amplified? So the question is, which one it is? So Amar Ravuna comes and he says, Lo shanu ela laotana omdim an sfat habor. When do we make such a differentiation between whether you heard the voice of the shofar or the voice of the echo? In the ones which are standing by Sfat bor, but the ones which are inside of the bor, for sure they yatsu. Why? Because they are only hearing the sound of the shofar itself. They're not hearing the echo. Meaning the echo is only on the ones on the outside, because he blew inside and now it comes on the outside. But the ones which are sitting inside, they for sure are only hearing the sound of the shofar. Tanya Miyach, we also learned this in the Braita. The Braita says, says the Gemara, I thought we said you're not going to be saying Chobah. But rather, you're right. It's exactly like Rav Huna. If you're inside of the pit, so then you're hearing only the sound of the pit. But if you're on the outside, it could be that you're hearing the echoes. You're not actually hearing the sound of the shofar. Instead of us learning it as a proof, because how do we learn it? We learned Braita, and then we said Tanya Miyach, we have a proof. Now we're doing the opposite way around. They learned it as a question. What does that mean? It says, we learned in the Mishnah, in our Mishnah, we just learned that if you blew the shofar inside of a bor or a dud, lo yatsa, you're not going to be tzedek chovah. Tanya yatsa, I thought we learned in the right that you are going to be tzedek chovah. Rav Huna says it's not a question. La kashya. Before we bring it as a proof, now we're bringing it as a question and then an answer. La kashya, it's not a question. Remember that whenever we're doing aramit, it's always la. Yeah, la kashya. Kan leotana omdim al sfat bor, the kan leotana omdim babor. It all depends whether you're on sfat bor, on the edge of the bor, or inside of the bor. Inside the bor, it's going to be good. Outside the bor, more. Amar Rava, and Rava says, Shema mina ushma miktzat. Okay, then we'll continue with Zat Hashem tomorrow.